Visiting with McKay Young, head coach of the Star Valley Braves, off to a 6-0 start. They are the top-ranked team yet again, a unanimous choice for number one in this week's WyoPreps.com Coaches and Media Football Rankings. And they've got a huge rivalry matchup against the Jackson Bronx Friday night. Well, Coach, first of all, let's start with 6-0 start. What have you seen so far out of your squad that you feel has allowed you to get to that 6-0 mark?
You know, we had a good team last year, and a huge chunk of those kids are back. Relied heavily on a really good junior class to win that state title a year ago. So to have, again, so many starters back on both sides of the ball now as seniors, it's been a blessing, and it helped us get out to a quick start for sure.
Are there any areas of concern at this point in time? Obviously, you're deep into the season, and I know coaches and how you think in terms of we want to get better week by week, but do you have any major things that you're still stressing to your team at this point in time?
You know, the biggest thing for us has just been getting healthy and staying healthy. You know, it hasn't been very many games this year where we've had everybody, and particularly our very best players, especially have struggled with knees and ankles and all kinds of things. So just getting and staying healthy is our primary concern right now.
You guys have been very balanced on offense this year, obviously rushing the ball a little bit more, which you guys are known for, but you've added a nice element with the passing game. What's it been like to see your team execute so well to have that balance?
Well, it's been good. Last year, our starting quarterback got hurt in the third game of the year, so we went to a sophomore. And, you know, Brant Nelson did a great job as a sophomore, but he was still a young pup. And, you know, comparing now to where he was a year ago, he's grown up a lot. And, you know, and the kid that got hurt last year is also part of that discussion, too. We play them both a little bit. So just a lot more experienced, and we've got a good group up front to protect him and some good guys on the edge to catch the football for sure.
Well, and it seems like you've got a number of different weapons, whether it's Dean Shaw or R.J. Kazir or Chase Merrill in the passing game. Do you like the fact that you've got a lot of different guys to go to?
We did. You know, I think in the Jackson game last year, we rode R.J. Kazir pretty heavily. I think he might have had 30 carries that night. So to be able to spread that burden around a little bit, hopefully that helps us in staying healthy the second half of the season, and obviously hopefully it makes us harder to defend as well.
Speaking of defense, Coach, how happy are you with what you've seen out of your defense? You guys have given up less than 200 yards per game. You're number one in Class 3A in total defense, and I know that Chase Merrill kind of anchors that defense along with a number of other guys, but what have you seen from that side of the ball so far?
You know, it's something that you don't get from the stats is our first team hasn't been scored on yet. And we went through kind of the ringer. We played the Utah State champs from last year in our first game. We played the Idaho State champs in our third game, a top 5 4A team from Idaho those first 3 weeks. So to have our first group not give up a single score or field goal even is pretty remarkable. And I it's not something that we're really committed to. I mean, we know Jackson's got a great O. We're going to see Cody next week who's got a good O. I mean, we're going to see some good offenses, and I don't know that you can hold on to that streak for an entire season. But, yeah, again, just some experienced guys. Chase there at free safety with a really good defensive line up in front of him and several other good players around. So if there's one thing I'm most impressed with this season, it's definitely our defensive group.
Now you get ready for a big rivalry matchup. Obviously, rivalry games take on their own kind of personality. I know this is a big one for you guys year in and year out. Do you like these type of big games and these rivalry matchups?
I do. You know, this is why you do it. Anytime we got a close game in the second half and we talk with them in a timeout or between the third and fourth quarter, I remind them, you know, this is what it's all about. This is fun. You know, a tight game at half and you're in the locker room. This is fun. You get those blowout wins, and it's nice for every kid to get on the field and be able to get all the guys in your program a little bit of playing time. But really, it's about the tight ball games, the really competitive ones, and with a good Jackson team, we expect one of those on Friday for sure.
What have you learned about this rivalry matchup here in the last few years, being part of the Star Valley staff, that maybe folks across the state might not know about when it comes to Star Valley and Jackson going head-to-head on the football field?
Just two very different communities because the culture is so different. And again, in Wyoming, it's hard to really have really good rivalries unless, you know, the Cheyenne schools or the Casper schools are right next to each other. But really for us, we don't have anybody that's closer than Jackson. They're just an hour away, which still seems like a long ways. But very distinct culture and identity. So I think on both sides that kind of adds fuel to the pride that goes along with winning a football game.
I asked Coach Joyce the same question, so I'll ask you, how do you keep your kids focused on a week like this when they know it's a big rivalry matchup?
This is by far the easiest week. No, this one's no work at all as far as that. This means a little bit to our kids. They want to make sure they're at their best. They listen a little bit better in film. They're a little bit more precise in the drill work. Team time's a lot better as far as an intensity level. No, for this one, our guys don't have any trouble with that.
I understand. Lastly, I want to ask you, what are your impressions of Jackson watching film and getting ready for the Bronx? What do you see?
It's a good, well-coached team. I think Coach Joyce has done a great job. Their guys know who to block. They know how to block them. Obviously, Jaden Cox is in that conversation. He's a phenomenal football player and makes a lot of things go, but he's not the only one. There's a lot of good players on that Jackson roster, and we know we're going to have our hands full tomorrow.
Coach, I greatly appreciate the time. Best of luck against the Bronx tomorrow night.
Thank you.
Visiting with David Joyce, head coach of the Jackson Bronx, who are off to a 3-2 start so far this season, 1-1 in the 3A West Conference. And Coach Joyce, thank you so much for taking some time. First of all, how would you kind of characterize what you've seen out of your team in a 3-2 start this?
Well, we're actually 4-2. We play Teton 0 week, and to the state of Wyoming it doesn't count, but to every other state in the union it counts. It's kind of weird. I don't know why it doesn't count, but we're still getting better. We have yet to put together a complete game. We haven't really played 4 quarters yet. We have a sophomore quarterback. We got some young guys out there in some spots. Still trying to get them to mature for playoffs. So we're really looking for just a complete 4-quarter game.
Obviously, Jaden's gotten off to a great start. He's already got 1,000 yards rushing already this season, averaging 9 yards per carry. I know teams will focus on him. What do you do to try and get him the ball in good spots, Coach?
We just run our offense. We don't adjust or adhere to other teams like that. That stuff gets you beat. And we just kind of run our offense. And, you have to be able to run the ball in high school football. And our offense is a run, play, action-based offense. And, you're always going to feature a tailback. And Jaden's our tailback. And so, he gets featured a lot. But we don't really talk about our opponent, or we really just say, hey, we're playing an odd front. These are your rules. And then our odd play sheet comes into effect, and we call it as we see it based on that. So we try not to beat ourselves or get too cute, and just get better each week with what we do and not what they're doing. But, yeah, Jaden is, speaking of Jaden, I mean, he is obviously, we like to call him a video game because he gets out there and, he does what Jaden does.
What about the development? What have you seen from Sadler so far, just in terms of his improvement? As you mentioned, he is just a sophomore, but obviously he's going to get better as the season goes. So what have you seen out of him improvement-wise?
He extends the play. I threw a bunch at him at the beginning of the year, but he really does a good job of extending the play. Last week we had a 3rd down against Green River, and they had a good defensive scheme, and they covered us up on the play side, and for a sophomore to step up, extend the play, and hit his 5th option on the play for a touchdown was pretty nice, while eluding some pressure. And so he's getting better at that portion. That's kind of hard to coach, poise in the pocket. And so we're hoping as the year goes on, he'll just keep getting better at that portion. Cody put a lot of pressure on him early in the game and hit him, knocked him to the ground 4 times. Pretty good shots in the first half. And then, obviously in the 4th quarter, he converted 2 4th down, conversions with the pass. And so we're really liking how he's hanging in there.
Defensively, you guys are doing very well, giving up just, 9 points per game and not a lot of total yards. What has been the calling card on defense for your squad this year, led by Coulter Dawson?
Well, we started slow, we didn't rally to the football against Teton real well, and we really challenged them and said, hey, we're a defensive football program through and through. I'm a defensive coach. I mean, I call the offense, but at heart, I'm a defensive coach, and so Coulter is the anchor on the inside, but they really kind of just rallied around, taking pride in the message after that Teton week that we watched film and we were not rallying to the football like last year. Defense is one of those things where you got to kind of want to as well as scheme. And so Coulter does a really good job in the middle of rallying those guys in the game. If a team gets a big play, he gets them back up, and we go.
Your team has done a nice job bouncing back from losses, whether it was Bear Lake earlier or thinking back to the way you bounced back last week and dropped Green River coming off the tough loss to Cody. Now you get a Star Valley team that everybody kind of sees as the 3A team to beat. What are your thoughts on a big rivalry matchup like this between the Bronx and the Braves?
Yeah, the Bear Lake thing was just kind of. I've been a head coach for a while at 4 different programs, turning around 4 different programs. Mm-hmm. And I've been a part of 2 games like that. That was like the Twilight Zone. I mean, we ran 62 plays, and 17 plays had a penalty or a turnover. It was unbelievable. And we still had a shot to win it at the end. And then Cody, we didn't play a lick. We had some adversity earlier in the day and didn't play a lick in the first half. And then to come back and lose it the way we lost, it was pretty tough. And so I do really like the way our team has, faced it, owned up to their mistakes, and corrected them. Star Valley, obviously, we can't take a half off like we did against Cody and have a shot to win. Our defense is good, but, if you're expecting to beat a team with a win strength like they have, a defense like they have, you have to play 4 quarters, and that's kind of what the message we've been saying is we got to play this play, not the next one, and hopefully we can put together, a few quarters consecutively.
Obviously, this is a big rivalry on that side of the state. So how do you keep your guys focused on the task at hand this week when they know it's such a big game?
It's hard, and I'm sure it's hard for, Coach Young down there. I mean, you can try to act like it's another week, but the kids know. I mean, with social media, the way it is, I mean, they know. And so we try to simplify things, to be honest with you. Just not beat ourselves, not put in any extra stuff. You always game plan for the upcoming opponent. And, a lot of times what happens is you got this special play or this package, and it ends up getting you beat. And so what we try to do is just take a step back and, fall back on what we build our foundation on, so that the kids in the moment when the energy's high and the emotions are there, that they can kind of fall back on what they've known and just be able to have an opportunity to execute.
I've talked with several coaches who have been in big games this season. Do you like this type of a big game atmosphere and this type of a rivalry matchup?
It's the only reason I coach. I don't coach for the gimmies. I don't coach for the Pondales or the Green Rivers. That's the only reason I'm still coaching is for games like this. These are the ones that I don't get nervous for. These are the ones that I get real euphoric, I get up for, because, I mean, they're the ones that you remember when you're older. The ones that make a lasting impact, whether you win or lose. I mean, you can win these, you can lose these. I've won, everywhere I've won, I beat a team that we shouldn't have beat or a team we've never beaten before, yada, yada, yada. And those are the ones that when you look back, you smile on. So I hope, the bigger the game, the better, and I'm trying to get our guys, again, when you're turning around a program, that's the hardest transition is, the big games. And so far, I feel like we've hung tough in there in some of our bigger games the last 3 years.
Lastly, I know that you're concentrating your squad on what you want to do, but what are your just thoughts on what you've seen on film from Star Valley in this matchup that they kind of present on Friday night?
Well, it's one of 2 things. You can look at it. I used to coach in Colorado, and we would play Valley Christian when Christian McCaffrey was there.
Okay.
And yeah, and we were their biggest threat. And but they had to get, in the regular season, they had to get Brian Dawkins Jr. the ball. They had to get Luke Del Rio, who Jack Del Rio's, he was the DC for the Broncos. They had to get all these people the ball. And, some games that bit them in the butt because they weren't doing what they usually did. Sometimes it really worked out. And then when they got in the playoffs, all they did was give it to McCaffrey right, McCaffrey left. They won a state championship. Nobody could stop the guy. And so, I see Star Valley as, last year they had some adversity and they really just pounded it. And that was what they were good at. And you could tell it was really hard for anybody to stop, us included. And, I see on film they're getting Shaw the ball. They're giving the tall receiver Merrill the ball. And sometimes it just doesn't look like the old Star Valley team. And that's dangerous on one side of the coin, but it's also advantageous for the other team as well. And so, it's just like, it's one of those things that they execute with all these multiple threats. They're pretty unbeatable. I mean, it's going to be pretty tough. In the same token, I don't feel like that's who they are at their core. I feel like they're a running team that wants to run off tackle power and just make you stop it. And so I really don't know what we're going to see out of them, if they're just going to try to pound it down our throat or if they're going to try to mix it up.
Well, with that said, best of luck to you on Friday night, and thanks so much for your time again, Coach Joyce.
Yep, absolutely.